Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Pod Strickland. I'm your host, Shwin and this episode 459. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host Stacy. That is at StacyPenn89 on Twitter. Stacy, how you doing?
Getting ready for Pod Strickland Armageddon in the Super Bowl, man. Are you going to wear an Eagles shirt if we win? We beat
No, I'll fucking never wear an Eagles shirt in my entire life.
I'll wear a Bills shirt if you guys win. Oh, you got the
respect for you to do that. The Bills are
so there's no Pod Strickland bet. That's premature. All due respect to Jaden Daniels and the.
You know what? I think I have a Deshaun Jackson Eagles jersey somewhere in storage. So I'll send that over to you if the Eagles win. That'll be my gift to you.
I'll order you a set of buffalo wings.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. Well, we're not here to talk about football, unfortunately. We're here to talk about basketball. Before we do that, do have to make a few announcements. First, being that Strickland has a YouTube channel where you may watch this podcast. If you are in the done already, please subscribe to the channel, leave us a comment. That'd be a huge help to us. Strickland also has merchandise, which you can find on our website at www.thestrick.land. There's a link that'll take you to the merchandise store, and there's all kinds of cool stuff that you can find on there, like t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, coffee mugs, water bottles, you name it, we've got it. The Strickland also has a Patreon, which you can subscribe to. There are a number of different tiers. There's a $6 tier that gets you access to Pod Strickland's podcast that I host every Friday with Prez. You also get access to Takes from Obvious Bozos, podcast hosted by Andrew Steele, a.k.a. Doug, along with Zach Blatter, and you get access to the Strickland Discord with the conversation never stops. There are further tiers. There's a $9 tier that gives you access to Strickland Roll, my solo pod where I rant about the Knicks more. You also get access to one of our premium articles by Matthew Miranda, one of the best in the business. And you get access to Strictly NFL, which you guessed it, is a podcast hosted by Konstantin Metrikos and Desmond Novak. There are further tiers. There's a $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and $100 tier. There's with a variety of additional benefits, like listening on our pod recordings, merchandise discounts, even potentially co-hosting a podcast alongside yours truly one day, whether you choose to subscribe. None of this would be possible without you. And none of this would be possible without BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch games as they happen with the largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA, NHL to entertainment and political props. Head to BetOnline today to get into the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline. The game starts here. I believe the last time we talked was after the Knicks dropped a game to the Pistons. So since then, they dropped a game to the Timberwolves, and then they won back-to-back games against the disgusting crosstown Nets, as well as one of their best wins of the season. Not necessarily because of the quality of the opponent, but given their success against the Knicks this season, and I think just how intense the game was played, I thought it was a really solid win for them against Atlanta the night before. So I don't know. Do you feel better about the state of the team since we last talked? Because I've not ever been super concerned in terms of I think they're just going to be really good. But, the questions I don't have answers for. I don't know if I can feel better about them until much later on in the season. But I don't know how you're feeling about things, because it feels like, I don't know, maybe this is just a case of being online too much, but it certainly feels to me like every game swings opinion about the Knicks among the fan base in a very drastic way.
I mean, it's the middle of the season. This is new territory for Knicks fans. I would actually be curious because I think you have probably suffered through many years the Bills not being good. And every year is now Super Bowl or bust, it feels like, for the Bills. There's an interesting parallel there. I do think a lot of this, it feels like, even looking at the strict cord, we are more tense and anxious. I'll include myself in this, anxious and worried about every single little thing. Certainly the year that they made the 4 seed, it was a very flawed team. It was nowhere close to this fun. It was nowhere close to this good. I mean, we didn't have
I think it was more fun. It might have been more fun. Not in the context of their actual style of play or what they were capable of, but in the sense of it was like every game was kind of like a, I don't know, Like
It was
after a
house
certain
money a little bit.
after a certain point in that season, every win was just kind of like a bonus on top
Yeah,
of
and that's
something.
the point. I mean, you have of the top 10. I think right now, two of the top 10 players in basketball who complement each other perfectly. And if they're not both going for 30 points a night, it's a disappointment. Even though they're like insane, like these are the two best players since Patrick Ewing we've had on the team and at the same time in their prime.
We might have the three best players since Patrick Ewing, if you ask me.
Oh, you're just shitting on Melo, but
Am I?
I am actually. This is my hot take. I'm putting Cat. I have more fun watching Cat than I did watching Melo, and I think he's a better player.
Do you think you'd have more fun watching Cat if he jabs up at the elbow more often?
I think he'd be better at it. He's a really good shooter, and like you can't. That would actually be really good if he couldn't just do that. He does that from three. He does the same fucking shit from three. The point I'm making is that it is like there's been more angst. I think that's the right word to use, despite this probably being aesthetically and you know just looking at expectations rationally a much better team. And I think a lot of that is the expectations, but I also think there's other stuff to it. I think that when Tibbs came here, you look back to the 2021 season, the rep for the Knicks was this is not a great team. This is a team you don't want to play. This is a team that's going to be fucking brutal to play. You are going to feel them. Julius Randle was like, even though he wasn't a great defender, just I mean, I cannot imagine, but if you're a defender and he's just putting his shoulder into your chest 15, 20 times a game, that's not fun. I don't think the Knicks were fun to play against. That was the big change. And they've been that way even really until last year. Where
I would
it's
even
just
say I'd say even last year they still had a little bit of like a underdog kind of
that's what I'm
vibe
so
going.
I'm including it, sorry. Up to and including last year. Where they had like that physical, they're not the Celtics, but you don't want to play these guys. You're gonna, it's like Dan Campbell, right? Like you might knock us down, but we'll bite a kneecap on the way up, right? That was this team's mentality. Yeah, I mean, don't laugh. Hey,
I'm just
it
laughing because that's like one of the funniest. I still remember the first time I read that quote. I was just like, "All right, man."
Where's this coming from? And the identity has changed now, where this is a team that can blow out anybody in the league. It's also a team that can struggle to beat the Nets. It's a team that can get until this week lose to the Hawks twice, right? A team that can look like a G League team at times. And that's kind of how they're built now, right? Because they traded in that identity. And they're banking on Bridges, Hart, and OG to bring that part of the equation to them, and saying, but what we lost there, we now have the actual top tier talent. So there's two things. One, there's the expectations of a championship now. The championship is not, wow, could we really win one? That's the expectation to be in that conversation at the minimum. And two, it's that their identity has changed a little bit from the team that's just going to be a pain in the ass to play every night, but isn't a real threat, to a team that is a real threat, but you can also get them on any night.
Yeah, I mean, I think I put this in our Discord yesterday. I will say this: I didn't watch the Nets game live. We had our soccer game for my men's league. We, if anyone cares, we went top of the table, so we control our own destiny now for the playoffs. Happy to let the masses know, but I just saw people reacting after the fact, and I had like messages from friends and stuff, and it was just a lot of like, "What happened to the offense? How come nobody can make shots? Like, what the fuck are they doing?" It just felt like a lot of very like, and I hadn't even seen the score, but like I'm looking at the fucking messages. I'm like, Jesus, did they lose? Like, what happened here? Obviously, look, they win by 4, 99-95. It's an ugly win, and I get that. But like,
Ugly win in front of Sydney Sweeney too. Maybe that had them shook.
I'm not too worried about Sydney Sweeney. Taylor Rooks was there. They need to put on a better show for her. But I'm watching this game expecting just like really piss poor effort, like just constant dog shit offense. And really, it just felt like they couldn't buy a bucket in the fourth, but I didn't think they were playing bad. Like I didn't think they were playing bad. I thought they played hard the entire game. I mean, sure, there's like individual possessions you can point at. I thought they played hard most of the game. I thought for 3 quarters, was it perfect offensive execution? No, but pretty good. Like not bad. Like I think they had 84 through three quarters, so you're on pace for what, like 112.
All
Like
right, Indian math guy, chill
I
out.
know, yep. But like it's not, obviously that's not like 112 in the modern NBA. Given our offense, given the opposition, is not anything amazing. But it's also not like if they put up 112, we would have been like, oh my god, can't believe the offense, right? And in the fourth quarter, so like I know the score by the time I'm watching the game, so I'm like, all right, this is gonna end 99-95. They've got to just be doing like a ton of stupid shit. And yes, they had some turnovers, but I didn't even think the turnovers were really that bad for the most part. I thought like a lot of them were in the attempt of trying to make the right play. So sloppy, sure, but not inherently stupid or like lazy. It's probably the best way. It was not a lazy effort game from them. And, you got some decent contributions off the bench. I thought Precious had a decent game. I thought Deuce had a decent game. Brunson did not have his best shooting night. He had 9 points going into the fourth quarter, but he comes up big down the stretch after, again, rough shooting night for sure, and not a great processing night for him. Like, again, do I think that his decisions were all really sloppy and lazy and poor? No, but I do think he got a little focused on looking to hunt for contact. Then he picks up his dribble. Now he's stuck at the free throw line, that type of stuff. Yeah, I think that happened for sure. And that definitely happened kind of in the middle of that fourth quarter. And they were really like, it was like they needed to just see, one bucket go down. But like, this is stars are stars because at any given moment they can get their shit together. And Brunson got his shit together right when we needed him to. Mikal didn't have a good shooting night. OG didn't have a good shooting night. But did you watch them, like the shots they were taking, and think like these are terrible shots? I didn't. Like OG didn't even take a post up yet that game. So for me, that's like a fucking victory. But I thought they generally took good shots and they didn't fall. And I thought Cat took a lot of good shots that, especially in the fourth quarter, that you would like him to take because they're good shots for him. They didn't fall. And, Deuce missed a corner three in the fourth quarter, a wide open corner three. Guys miss shots that you want them to take and expect them to take. And if they got them consistently, you'd be pretty happy about it. And, I think there's something to be said of like the Nets switched a lot and the Knicks have to find ways to generate threes against switching teams. This is something they've struggled with. They're down to 23rd in the league now in 3-point attempt rate. That needs to come up. But even with stuff that we can say this needs to get better, that needs to get better, they're still second in the league in offensive rating. So, they're still scoring at a very, very efficient clip. And this is after months, or not months, but like weeks of people being like, what's wrong with their shooting? What's wrong with their shooting? Nothing's wrong with their shooting. It just happens. Like if you are reliant, not even reliant, but every team that takes a lot of jump shots, guess what? You're going to have stretches where the jump shots aren't falling.
Go back and look at some of Steph's. There's been every season there's some stretch where Steph Curry is like 4 for his last 33s or something. And people are like, oh no, is he washed? It's like, no.
Yeah. and like, I mean, I can't tell you I watched the fucking Cavs. I've watched stretches of the Cavs, but they had a game a couple weeks ago where they played the Pacers. They scored 94 points. So weird shit happens. In terms of shot making night to night. So you had Brunson have a bad shooting game. Mikal had a bad shooting game. OG had a bad shooting game. Josh Hart didn't have a bad shooting game, but he just didn't shoot much last night. Deuce didn't have a particularly good shooting game. Campaign took 2 shots, missed both. Precious is like the only other guy I think on the team other than Cat that shot the ball well, and he took 7 shots. He went 5 of 7. So it's not like he took a high volume of shots. When that happens,
that's a light night at Rick, 7 shots.
But like when that happens, yeah, you're gonna have a bad offensive game. But again, I thought Tibbs said it the right way after the game, where he's like, "Look, you got to be able to win games in different ways. And for this team, very particularly, coming off that Hawks game, I think if this was one where they put up 120, if they had won like 120 to 116, I probably feel worse about. I wouldn't feel as good as I felt about the way they won yesterday's game. And I know that the Nets are playing a bunch of fucking randoms. They played some guy, I don't even know what the hell his name is, Egbunam, or I don't know what. I don't want to butcher his name. I don't know who he is. I think he's from Britain or something. So he's clearly not good at basketball. But they're just
Like
playing a
OG
lot of
Anunoby?
yeah. But they're playing a lot of like random, guys or whatever. Guys like Keon Johnson trying to stick around in the league. D'Angelo Russell, journeyman at this point, right? Like they're playing a lot of guys, and a lot of their lineups don't make sense, right? You're playing Claxton and Nick Clown together. I get all of that, but you hold any team to 95 points in a competitive game, and I mean, we can be real about this. For the Nets, this was like their fucking Super Bowl. Like they've played all 3 Knicks games to me this year. Like this is the most fucking important game of the year, and that's
Are
actually
they the
fine.
Michigan State of pro basketball?
Yes, and that's fine. Like they should play these games hard. This is probably some of the easiest games for them to get up for in a season where they know what the front office is trying to do, right? There's no ambiguity about what they would like to happen here on the floor. They would like to lose games. They know they're at a talent disadvantage a lot of games. They lost by 59 points the other night to the Clippers. So they know that they're going to be games they get blitzed. And I'm sure, against other teams, I guarantee you, against other teams, when they're down 12 or 13 points, I don't think they're going to be coming out of halftime just guns blazing, going super fucking hard, crashing the glass like their lives depended on it. But they did. So the Knicks, they had to constantly kind of keep their guard up and keep their intensity up. And I didn't feel like it. I mean, yeah, you can point to the start of the third quarter for sure as a part of the game where the Knicks got outworked. Aside from that, I didn't think there was a game where the Knicks, or a part of the game where the Knicks got outworked. I didn't think there was a part of the game where their defense wasn't in tune. Like, again, yeah, do mishaps happen for sure, but this was not a game of just like, oh, we're gonna leave. It's easy for them to generate these. It's easy for them to
Are there
get
games you would say that has been the case that you would compare this to, like against the Magic
Utah.
But that was the altitude and all that. But
Maybe.
you
I
are
mean,
saying that.
But they had 2 days off for that game. I don't care about the fucking altitude. Like they came out, they were flat. They got their asses kicked. You could point. I would say definitely both the Pistons game to me. I know the Pistons are a better team. Those games to me, the Knicks did not get serious early enough in games, and that's both from a coaching and from a playing perspective. Yeah, I think there are plenty of games you can point to this year. There are plenty. Yeah, the Orlando one is one. Off the top of my head, I think you could say like the first Bulls game to an extent, although I'm a little bit more sympathetic to that because it was a back-to-back. But like, yeah, they've had a multitude of games where they've not delivered in terms of like attention to detail, intensity, all that type of stuff. And I'm not saying the Knicks were like maxing out yesterday, but this was not a game where I felt like they were flat or they were not up for it or they needed to wait, until they're down 10 at some point in the second half to turn it up. I mean, they won this game, but the game you could point to would be that Pelicans one, right? Where they're like down 14 midway through the third quarter and then Brunson has to go supernova and they end up winning comfortably. But like, those are the games that are more frustrating to me. This one was frustrating, I guess, obviously in the way of like, yeah, man, I would love if guys made more shots, but in terms of like, if you want to build on something, I think it was important to get that Hawks win the way they got it. I thought they matched the intensity of the Hawks after kind of a little bit of a slow start. The Hawks were hot from 3 in that game, even though, and the Knicks did a good job of actually limiting the 3-point attempts. They only took 33s, but I think they made 15 or 16 of them. So they were just hot. And I thought they made some threes that pretty well contested, like not just wide open. You have 50 seconds to line it up. So like to build on that, a game that I think the Knicks had to take that game from the Hawks, especially given the weird officiating throughout, to take that game from them, and then come back and play the Nets at a night where a lot of your main guys just aren't hitting shots. Like, I think that's a solid win. That's not one you're going to remember at the end of the year. It's not one we're going to ever care about in terms of like, what it meant for the season, really. But I think if you're trying to, if this is supposed to be some, okay, we realize the defense has been unserious and whatever. I think coming out on a game like this and playing the way they did, given all the circumstances and the results of their general shooting, I think that this was a good win for them, and I agree with Tibbs again. Like I agree with that. That sometimes you have to win games ugly. You have to overcome. Like the Knicks can, and I don't disagree with them. I did not think this whistle again tonight or last night rather was very fair, but like they got the fuck over it and they got the win. And like end of the day, you got to find ugly wins. This is a Nets team that I think they lost by 5 to Cleveland at one point. They took the Celtics to overtime at one point. They beat the Lakers the other night, or they lost the Lakers already the other night on the road by 1 point. I believe that was the second night of a back-to-back even for them. So like they're not god awful. I mean, they are awful, but they're not. They have shown like fight, right? And it's an NBA team at the end of the day with like NBA players. So this would have been an easy one given the Knicks shooting struggles to drop, but they didn't. They found a fucking way to get it done, and they had to do it doing things that we have been saying this year are why can't they like max the intensity against some of these teams? Why can't they get consistent stops on defense? Why does it feel like every three we give up is uncontested and wide open? Why like they did that?
Do you think they've been the victims of bad 3-point luck in general? Because I think there's been a lot of discussion about 3-point rate. The 3-point rates haven't been high. The wide open and open rates haven't been high, and the tracking data can be wonky. I mean, gut feel, do you think that 3-point variance and just teams getting hot has played a abnormal role in kind of the Knicks this year?
So to some, like I think there's some of that. Sure, like I do think there's nights they've gotten unlucky, guys have gotten hot and made contested threes or whatnot. That you have to live with to some extent. But I also think there are nights where they have not let they. It's like if you just are not trying really defensively for like a half or 3/4, and then it's a tight game in the fourth, and all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, like we got to really ramp it up here. You've allowed players to get into a rhythm, feel comfortable, feel confident. Like I think that it's hard to discern luck versus without luck, but I think they have done. I don't think they've always been clean with their execution defensively, and when you're not clean with your execution defensively, to me, like you're going to have more instances where luck goes against you. Let's say, the harder, like what's the saying? The harder I work, the luckier I get. Right? Like
You make your own luck, all that. Yeah.
yeah, like if you are not closing out to shooters consistently or cleanly or on a string defensively, then yeah, maybe those open threes that they feel more open even if the contest is ultimately okay. And also like there's shit like, for example, if you leave me wide open from three, well not me because I'm terrible, but like an actual good shooter, let's say Malik Beasley, right? Like because we saw this a couple nights ago or last week. If you leave Malik Beasley open from three and he knows, okay, I know that if I wait a little longer, the contest will be there, but I'm such a good shooter that if I just get this lined up, like, you know what I mean? Like I'm fine taking that shot because I'm a great shooter, right? I'm a great shooter. So I don't care about your contest at that point because I've had time to line it up and get, this, like, I'm comfortable. So like, that's where all that stuff doesn't make sense to me because there are times where you can take an open three and it feels a little less comfortable than an in rhythm three that's contested. That happens to all of us when we've played, I'm sure. So I don't know what to take from that, but I would not say that I don't feel the Knicks have gotten unlucky. I will put it that way. I think there are numbers you could probably point to that say that. But I would also bet I could point to film and say, like, do you really think that's a good three to give up there? Do you think the shooter felt uncomfortable? Do you think he wasn't in rhythm? Like, I don't think they've gotten unlucky. And that's why, like, Like, and on nights where I do think they've gone unlucky, I've said it. Like when they got fucking destroyed, they have 129 to Dallas. That was a game to me where I was like, I didn't think their defense was bad that night. I thought Dallas made a lot of fucking bullshit threes that night, and I said it. I said it at the time. I did the post game. We did the pod like the day after, and I said it. I was like, I thought the defense was fine, and I thought you got Dinwiddie hitting bullshit. You had Grimes hitting every fucking three. By the way, Quentin Grimes, same averages as last year now, pretty much, or not last year, his second year. And like, they had all these fucking bullshit guys hitting shots. Like, it happens. That happens for sure. But that's why, to me, these two games together, Atlanta and Brooklyn, are good wins, because Atlanta, they shot really hot from three, but we held them under their season long 3-point attempt rate. And we found a way to win that game, and we executed down the stretch. We took that game from them in the fourth quarter. We took it from them. We out executed them. We got better shots. We got better shots consistently. And at the end of the day, it was a comfortable victory. And like, so you say, like, you that's a really good win for the Knicks, right? And it wasn't just a good win because, general of what I'm talking about, but you could see the Knicks were on a string defensively. You could see that they were really rotating well. They were switching cleanly. They were, they had a plan for how they wanted to handle Trae Young. You could see he forced that 24-second shot clock violation early in the first quarter, and you're like, all right, like, these guys are really into the game. You could feel that intensity, that physicality, their effort. And then you come out last night, your offense, like, and it's weird, right? Because the offense had it going early. They kind of, I wouldn't say they were totally off for most of the game, but through three quarters, 84. This is a team we know they can go for $110 in three quarters on a certain night. But they weren't, but they were okay. But then the offense just deserts you to start the fourth quarter. So you have to lean it. You need to get stops. And you can watch how they defended Brooklyn in that fourth quarter. And I guarantee you, they played
They
good.
had 5 points, like, with 2 minutes left.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a pretty everything. That cannot just be bad process, right? That's a little bit.
No, that's, dude. Like I said, Deuce missed a wide open corner three. Brunson missed a couple shots that you would, like, generally think he would make at least one or two of. Cat missed a floater. He missed a wide open three at the top of the key. I know he's feeling his finger a little bit right now, but again, on the whole, you would think those are shots that you would like your odds making that. McCallum missed a couple of shots. OG missed an open corner at three. Like, these are shots, again, that you want them taking. They were not falling, but you worked your ass off defensively. You competed on the glass. Yeah. Did you get every defensive rebound? No. But, like, I thought they did a pretty good job after the start of the third quarter, where they gave up a bunch. And you found a way to gut that out. And, like, you need to have those wins over the course of the season. Sometimes you just need that. And now, if you look at it, the Knicks' Pythagorean win-loss is 30-15. They're 29-16. So, are they unlucky? Are they lucky? I would say they're right about where they're supposed to be based on all the metrics that you would use to judge that. And yeah, look, they're 12-13, I believe, against teams above 500. So they definitely need to get better at executing against better teams. But taking care of business against bad teams is generally the path to 50 wins, which is why I always think it's stupid when people are like, oh, they struggle against good teams. It's like, yeah, no fucking shit, dude. Most teams are not going to go out and win, fucking, you're not going to go 21-10 over the first 31 games or something against above 500 teams. It's just not how it works. And they've all talked about it, right? They've talked about, we need to be our best towards the end of the season. We need to be, we're trying to peak at the right time. And it can be frustrating in the moment. I've been frustrated in the moment listening to that shit. I'm like, okay, but, like, can you, like, what if you started a game trying on defense? What if you did that? And I get that. But, I do think we should all be a little bit prepared for the fact that this team knows they're really good offensively. And so, like, they're probably not just going to be dialing it up on defense every fucking game, like, especially over the course of a regular season, especially given some of the minutes these guys are playing. Like, you can't expect that. I think it's crazy to expect that. Like, do you think the Celtics are dialing it up every fucking night? No, they're not. And we don't have the depth, obviously, that we have had in the past. So yeah, less margin for error. So maybe, and again, like we talked about right at the beginning, higher expectations leads to this feeling of, like, We're not good enough. We're not good enough. We're not good enough. To the point where it's like you're judging quality of wins, right? Like we're fucking, doing like a BCS ranking or something. But was this a quadrant 1 win? Are we sure? Like that's not what this is.
But that's why I use the word angst, right? It's like because when they have faced the top competition in the league, the results haven't been great. They had 3/4 of what I thought was the best basketball they played against Oklahoma City. Didn't come out with the win. The first game of the season, I'll almost write that off. that's a recipe for disaster. A completely new team, new identity going against the defending champs. Cleveland, I thought they actually played really well. But Denver is really their signature win. So I think, and those opportunities have been few and far between. So I think fans are gravitating towards, you are looking for signals in every game because we just haven't gotten those opportunities much. And when we have, it hasn't gone on.
But if we're going to be real about it, the only thing I've heard, right? The only criticism is like, well, they haven't beaten the Cavs, they haven't beaten the Celtics, they haven't beaten the Thunder. Okay, first of all, I'm just going to throw this out there. I don't know if this team's ever going to, they're not going to beat the Thunder this year. Okay. Like, I just don't see it. I'll be shocked if they do. Second, well, now we know they're not in the regular season anyway, right? There's no question about that. That's over. They got both those games out of the way. They lost both. They played the Celtics once. They played the Cavs once. They played the Celtics the first game of the year. They played the Cavs the third game of the year. We haven't played them, either of them, since. So if we're going to be, and then I guess people would say Dallas, but now they're beat up. So, even if the Knicks win that, it'll be like, well, you only beat Dallas because they were beat up and whatever. I understand why you want to, it's like viewing things that way. And then you get losses like Minnesota where you're like, what the hell was going on there in the fourth quarter? Why is Brunson playing like a weirdo half the time? Like, I get that. I feel that. I have expressed those feelings. But, like, if nothing is going to make you feel better than beating one of those teams, then just fucking say that and like, don't bore anybody with the rest. Because it's not about process. It's not about what you're seeing. It's not about any of that shit. Because it's just about, you want a signature win against a team that is what most perceive, right? Most are calling those three teams the true contenders in the league, right? Okay, then just say that. Say that until the Knicks beat one of those teams, you're just not going to be viewing them as a real contender, and that's fine. But then we don't need to worry about the rest. We don't need to worry about pretending like we care about the process and we're determined. Like we're not just talking about results. We need to do X, Y, Z. Because if we're just talking about X, Y, Z again, I don't know how you don't come away from these last two wins in totality, looking at them, and come away being like, actually, that's not bad. Like, they had to fight and compete against a Hawks team that was pretty intense. I mean, that was a pretty intense game. They didn't get a great whistle in that game. They had to overcome a really shitty whistle. I mean, that was a weird whistle both ways. So I'm not just going to say, like, the Knicks got a horrible whistle and the Hawks got a great one. But you had to overcome just kind of like fighting through that adversity of, like, feeling wronged at various points and being in foul trouble for large parts of that game. You had to overcome that. You had to overcome a terrible shooting night on the second end of a back-to-back. And sure, it makes it easier that you're playing the Nets, but you still have to do it. And that's something we haven't seen them do this year, where they've won like exactly one of those games. And I'll say this, because I read John's newsletter today for KFS, and he was like, this felt a lot like that Hornets game. I don't want to put words in his mouth. I forgot exactly what he wrote, but he was kind of like trying to draw a parallel between this and that Hornets game that the Knicks won 99-98 on Black Friday. And the difference, I would say, is I like watching that game. I was annoyed watching that game. I was just like, this is such an unserious performance. Mikal played like just bad, and you're like, what the fuck is this? I didn't feel that way watching this game last night. Maybe it's because I already knew the result in advance. I don't think so. I think it's just, you could tell that they were not bullshitting. I didn't think they were bullshitting last night. I thought they were really genuinely trying to, they competed at a serious professional level, right? They didn't come out and treat the Nets like a fucking pushover. I didn't think they did that. It just, course of an NBA season, you're going to have games like this where you just got to find a fucking way to win. I mean, we watched the Knicks suck for how many years? How many games did we watch like this? How many games did we watch like this? Except we're on the opposite end of it, where you're like, oh my God, like.
Yeah, and I think the fact that it's mixed in with so many other games where they really were not engaged or, not playing it the way you described is probably why it just seems like another one, right? But it doesn't have to be the case, to your point.
Yeah, I think like it's easy to lump shit together, but I didn't think that. Like, for example, OG still has not really shot the ball all that well these last 3 games, but I think he's definitely played better these last 3 games than he did for like a good amount of time before that, where I thought his defense was really lacking, not dialed in consistently, getting beat off the dribble by players that he should never get beat off the dribble by. And that includes a loss. So these 3 games, one of them is a loss to it's that loss to the Timberwolves, 116-99, right? It's an ugly loss, but I thought OG himself played well in that game. I thought his defense was good in that game. I thought he competed at a high level in that game. So, like, I think it's easy to look at that box score last night and come away from it feeling like, man, what the fuck are the Knicks doing? But I think if you really watch the game, yes, again, do they need to generate more threes? For sure. But I think if you really give that a watch, my takeaway would not be that the Knicks were like, it was just not like a what the fuck are the Knicks doing type of game to me. Maybe in the sense of like, yeah, what like their offensive process could have been better in the fourth quarter, but not in terms of the compete level or anything like that. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. You don't want to over-index too much on any games. Benji had posted this before that, they had a few games. I forget when he posted this, but they had this game, the Hawks game, and the Timberwolves game. So it was just like, and now we have a 4-day break. And, he said, let's just get to the 4-day break and they can take a nice little vacation to a warm place. He was being facetious on the last point, but, they kind of job done 29-16. The schedule is going to get a lot harder, but, it does seem like if you step back, it's not as alarming as I think a lot of people are alarmed.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's the most expectation the Knicks have had in decades, really. I mean, I guess 2012-13 is probably the only other season in recent memory where there were legitimately like this team should be a contender type of expectations, right or wrong. And the metrics, honestly, like if you actually look at the metrics of that 2012-13 team, they were, I mean, they profiled as at least like a team that could title. Obviously it didn't work out that way, as we all know, but I think the expectations for this group are much higher than they are for that.
And even that team was after they performed well in the regular season. I mean, the beginning of the season, it was Melo and a bunch of end of career vets and JR, right? So it wasn't, and Tyson, but like before the season, the expectations have been riding high. They're coming off a big playoff. They're coming off the 2 seed, coming off Jalen Brunson becoming a true superstar. I think there hasn't been a down curve in expectations since 2022, really.
Yeah. Upward trajectory is not. I mean, it's even like 2022, 23. For the most part, no people didn't think the Knicks were going to go 47-35, especially they start 10-13. You're kind of thinking like, all right, so maybe they can make a run at like the play-in and then get in as a back half of the conference type of playoff seed. To make the run the way they did, get to the 5th seed, and then smoke the Cavs in the first round, a team that prior to the season most people thought were clearly at least 1 tier ahead and really 2 tiers ahead in most scenarios.
And I mean, they during the season they were second in net rating that year. So
they had a really high net rating. So like it was still kind of like a bonus type of season where you get to the playoffs. Honestly, we played Cleveland. I felt really good about our chances of winning that series. I'm pretty sure we all picked them to win the series because I think we all liked the matchup for the Knicks. But like if they had lost that series in hard fought 6 or 7 games, we'd probably all be sitting there after the season and been like, that was a good season. Like that's a good step the Knicks made, right? Like, a couple years ago they make the playoffs, but they get stomped on because their talent level is not there. Obviously, the year after that's like a mess. But to come back that way and we would have felt really good. But the fact that even won the playoff series was a bonus, and then all of a sudden you're in the series against the perceived 8 seed of Miami, and it feels a little disappointing in the end. But I think even after that, right? Like you zoom out after a month or so, you're probably like, look, could we sit here and talk about what should have happened in that series, what we could have done better? Yeah. But you feel good about where it's all headed, right? It still feels very and you're not worried because we still have all our picks. Like you still have all these young guys that were developing at that time. So you're not that concerned about it. And even going into last season, if you were concerned, it was probably more along the lines of like, well, can the Knicks keep pace? Like, can they at least maintain their position in the East or rise a little bit higher? And then obviously they did, right? They rise to the 2 seed, they win 50 games. And even though they did obviously they make a couple of consequential trades, right? They trade for OG, so quickly and RJ go out, and then you trade Grimes, and Fournier is expiring for Bogdanovich and Burks. But like you still felt like pretty secure in terms of like we control our own future in a lot of in all which ways, and there's no risk and all of that. The angst is different because not only are the expectations heightened now, but if the Knicks if they had a disaster season this year, you don't get like your reward at the end of that, right? That's gone. That goes to Brooklyn. You gave that pick away. So you don't have that. And then you don't have any young players that have established themselves at any serious level right now with the Knicks, right? Like, yeah, we drafted 4 rookies, but they don't play. And I understand why they don't play. I know people get frustrated by it. I'm fine with it. But like, so you're also worried. You're like, well, where's the young talent? Where's the young talent? So I think that heightens all of the kind of like angst and oh what is like so when you lose one of these games, especially like when you lose a game, like for example you lose to Detroit, right? It kind of is like not only do you lose, but they're a young rising team in the East, right? So you're almost kind of like, oh shit, man, is this a team that like what if we ended up playing in the playoffs? How would we match up against them? And when we lose to the Hawks, like how would we match up against them? So you have this kind of like dread of these unknown things that are maybe going to transpire. But I think overall, if I told you to start the year, the Knicks would be 29-16, and they had the sixth best net rating in the league. I don't know if how many people would have been like, oh, I don't know about that. Doesn't sound great to me. I think I'd have been like, yeah, that's pretty good. I'll take that. Are there things to get better? Yeah, but I'd take that.
Yeah, and we thought Mitchell Robinson would be back by now. I don't know how much information the Knicks had before the season, but obviously that's not something that I think everyone that is judging this team thought about. I think it's also just the thing you didn't mention is that we gave up 5. Maybe you didn't mention this. Sorry, we gave up all the picks for Mikal Bridges.
We lost control of our future.
It's it is now or never, right? Now, so I think you mentioned that this is a multiple year window, but I think anyone knows like the NBA is very fleeting, right? I remember watching the Thunder. You can say this about a million different teams, not a million, but a lot of teams in NBA history. We talked about this, right? When the Thunder lost the Heat, I was like, all right, well, this is just what KD needs and Russ need to get better and to come over the top, but they're clearly going to be here for a while. And they didn't make the finals again.
Yeah, I mean but they probably would have if they just kept it together, right?
Shaq in Orlando, right? The Sonics, the
well, yeah, like but
Kings,
most of these scenarios,
the Kings
Kings
in 2000, a long time ago for those who are
yeah,
younger.
I mean, most of these scenarios end up falling apart. At least not falling apart, but not getting the consistent run that you expect because of injuries to players. So that risk exists always. Like you will always have, even if we did nothing, right? Like if we just kept, if we didn't make any trades last year, then we have the same roster this year, like the risk we would run is it could still be injuries, and yeah, sure, we'd have our pick, but the risk is still there of like,
I mean, you could also point to teams that kind of fucked up their window by.
Yeah.
I mean, the Sonics, Sean Kemp didn't get hurt, right?
He got fat.
It was a contract. No, he was upset about his contract, and then he turned into Zion. Right before he was 6'10" Zion in a good world. But it doesn't seem like there's risks there, but there is, I think thinking that you have a 2 or 3 year window. I'm curious how NBA GMs look at this, just because things can happen, right? Every team had a window if you weren't playing, if it wasn't for a team in Chicago in the 90s, right? Mm-hmm. There may be a player, this is going to piss off people, but he's 20 years old, and I think I would call him the 5th best player in the NBA right now. I don't know if you'd agree with that. There is a player who is 20 years old and has an argument for the 5th best player in the NBA. With the cap and the apron and all that, like that might not be as important a factor, but there are exogenous circumstances. And so it makes you feel like every year you have a chance, you got to capitalize on it, right? I mean, people have been talking about this. Jeff was talking about it the year we lost to Miami, which, looking back on it compared to now, like we're a much better team than we were the team that lost to Miami. But he was saying that, that was kind of an opportunity, right? And I think every year people feel like things change so much. It's so unpredictable with how players move and, new players coming in and how good young players get in a very quick amount of time these days. That I think that adds to that angst. And it's like, yeah, but we have these guys under contract. We have great players. They're in their late 20s, in their prime. They have a couple more years at least. That is kind of the counter argument, I think, a little bit to that.
I mean, yes, like, but the future isn't known, so you have to, like, that's actually like probably the argument for being aggressive, and acquiring talent and pushing yourself forward. And like the Knicks bided their time. You know what I mean? They didn't just like, this front office didn't just come in and start like making big fucking moves right from the jump. And even when they started spending their cap space, right, and signing guys to long-term deals and stuff like that, they still kind of hedged their bets, right? Because they kept their young guys, they drafted more, and they didn't, they didn't push the panic button. They didn't go out and immediately trade for Donovan Mitchell the second that everybody demanded that they trade for Donovan Mitchell, because if you don't trade for Donovan Mitchell, what are we even doing here? Like, they didn't do that. They waited until a moment in time. And that moment, I think, everybody points to the OG trade, but I think that moment came sooner than that. I think that moment for them was midway through that 2022-23 season, when Brunson really started going off and the team as a whole had been playing well over an extended period of time. And you could see like your young guys are developing into actual quality rotation players, aside from one who will not be named because I don't want to slander him. But like, so they were like, all right, let's just see what happens if we get Josh Hart. Like, let's just see what this team looks like. But I think that was their first moment of like, all right, let's make a very moderate bet here, right? It's like, when you go to a casino, it's like, the first thing you do, you don't want to just fucking lay it all on black, right? You're not just like, oh, let me go to the roulette table and take out my wad of money and just throw it all on one bet right now. No, it's like, all right, let me work myself in. Let me play the table minimum here for a second. And so they're like, all right, let's put in a pick and bunch of expiring salary for Josh Hart. Let's just see what that looks like. And that group looked really good. So they're like, okay, let's take out Obi, who doesn't want to be here, and we're going to sign Dante, who we like, and maybe this team is too small and we have too many guards and all this stuff, but like, let's see what this group looks like. And see how good we are. And they saw how good we were, and they weren't good enough, right? They were 17-15, I think, when they make the OG trade, or 17-14. Then they make the OG trade. They lose the next game. But they're 17-15 by the time OG debuts. And that was like, at the time, for Knicks fans especially, right? Because we'd seen, obviously, we watched these guys grow as players and stuff. Like, you get attached, and we thought more quickly than any other fan base is going to think of him. We're going to think more of RJ than other fan bases think of RJ. And we were probably wrong about both those, to be quite honest. And so that in that moment, it felt
So
like,
are you
wow.
saying you like Quickly in his original role?
No, I think the Knicks, I think they knew what Quickly was. I don't think I felt this way by the time. I mean, I said this even before we traded him, where I was like, I don't think Quickly's going to become an all-star. I mean, he had I think he still has potential to be that, but I'll always just think like he's a guy who profiles really well next to superstars, and he can have a star impact in that capacity. But I don't think he is that in and of himself.
The guy.
Yeah.
I mean, Kyle Loring, I think, compared him to Conley very early in his career, and I actually like that comp a lot.
If you want to just talk about like what is his best kind of role and impact, like what role would he have his most impact in? It would be like something like Derek White or something, right? Where you're like never going to be the guy on the team, but you play well, you amplify everybody else because you're never going to be asked to do too much. Whatever. The point being is like, so you make this trade for OG, and obviously that works, and it's like, oh shit, like now we're really seeing where this group goes. But again, like they actually didn't have the option to run it back this year, so you had to take a risk. Like you had to take real chances because iHeart wasn't going to come. He didn't come back, so you lose the opportunity to run it back as is without iHeart. If iHeart comes back, maybe they decide not to do the cat trade. Who knows? I think they would still do it anyway. But who knows? Maybe they wouldn't have done it, and you'd have gotten to see like this team, basically last year's team, plus Mikal Bridges, right? Like the end of like the group that we had at the end of last year, plus Mikal Bridges. Maybe you would have gotten to see that. But we never had that opportunity. And, it is what it is. You have to pivot the best ways you can. So, like, other teams are always, everybody's always looking to improve. So you can never just be like, we solved it. It's over. Like, we have built the perfect team. Nothing more for us to do. Like Boston. Boston is a perfect example. Do I think they're a worse team than last year? I don't know. Like, I think there's a chance that
they're a year older, and
good. They could just be bored. Yeah, and they could be bored. Like it's the regular season. It's fine. Like I'm not worried about them as are they a contender or not. But they didn't do anything this summer, right? They didn't really add talent. They drafted Baylor Shireman, and like who cares?
A white guy?
Yeah,
they don't usually like white guys
in Boston, but like they didn't do anything, and other teams did add talent, and now you can kind of feel like, not, and I'm not just talking about the East, but the NBA in general. You can kind of feel like maybe that gap is not that gap that last year. Oh my God, this team is historically great. They're so much better than everybody else in the NBA. They're not that right now. Maybe they have that level still in them. I don't think so, because I just think when you don't add talent, it's natural that the gaps close. Because again, that's just how it works. And you're not going to have the same hunger the year after you win a championship in most cases. Like even look at Golden State, right? With KD. When they got KD the first year, that was easily their best year, right? They were easily, that was no question they were going to the championship. It was more or less a cakewalk. The second year, it's basically the same team, but Houston gets Chris Paul. And now you're in a dogfight in the Western Conference Finals, and you go to 7 games, you got to dig that one out. And yeah, you go to the finals and smoke Cleveland again, but like you could sense that, like, yeah, they're still the most talented, and push comes to shove, they're the favorite, but the gap is closing. And then, like you're talking about, when you keep these groups together, injuries and individual player drop off and stuff like that is inevitable. It's going to happen. So you always have to be looking to refresh your talent pipelines and finding ways to acquire more talent. And that's really, to me, the danger is when you just don't. The danger is getting complacent. And to date, I don't think the Knicks have ever really shown complacency. I think people mistook their patience with complacency and even cowardice at times, right? Where it was like, when are they going to make a big move? When are they going to make a big move? Well, you got to make a big move when it actually makes sense to make a big move, not just because you want the big move to happen. But look, for the foreseeable future here, the Knicks will need to be creative, aggressive, and definitely not complacent to maintain where they are and push higher. Because I mean, again, I don't need to keep saying this. Like, I don't think the Knicks are going to win a championship this year, which means they need more talent. So they'll need to find ways to do that. But that's actually the danger to me. The danger to me is not, will other teams get better? Will other teams kind of find ways to close the gap and shit like that? The danger is, do you just look at your team and think, well, we're good enough, so we don't need to worry about that right now. And these, we don't think that team is that good. We don't think this team is going to catch up to us. I don't think that team is that good. That's where the danger lies.
Yeah, I think, but they also have less flexibility now to go after those guys, to make those moves, right?
Yeah, but you have a good front office, so you trust your ability to do that. Like, what else are they going to do?
Yeah, but I mean, you could have the most resourceful person out there. If they have no money, they can't do much, right? Metaphorically speaking. So I'm not saying the Knicks have no wiggle room, but it is much more dampened, right?
I mean, I guess. I don't know. I think people have no idea what the fuck they're talking about when it comes to this new cap world that we're living in. Like, we saw a trade yesterday where the fucking Suns traded their 2031 pick for 3 first-round picks from another team. We've seen a guy like Dorian Finney-Smith, who everybody thought was some huge difference maker potentially. He got moved for 3 seconds. We saw Nick Richards, a guy that a lot of Knicks fans are like, oh, we got to get this guy. We got to get this guy. He moved for 2 seconds, effectively, net. Like, I think people do not fully understand how much money impacts asset cost in this new CBA environment and why that changes a lot of things. And even the value of assets as standalone things has changed. And the fact that you have teams like, again, so we saw the trade yesterday. It's Phoenix trading their 2031 pick for the least favorable of the 2025, the 2027, 2029 Cleveland and Minnesota picks. So they're probably not going to be great picks, but you got 3 picks for one, and that's because Utah has all these picks and they know that they're probably not going to be able to maximize using them. So now it's like, all right, well, we have so many picks. We need to consolidate this into a better pick down the line or something, because we're really not ready to use these picks either to get better players, or maybe we don't, or maybe the player that we would want to use them on isn't available. The level of player we want to use them on isn't available, or whatever. So who's to say what the Knicks are going to be able to do or not do this summer or the summer after that or whatever? I don't think people really know. I don't. And I think I feel people are still anchored in the value of things as they thought of them under the previous CBA. And I'm not sure that's accurate anymore, especially after seeing that trade yesterday. Like, I don't know, what's to stop the Knicks from going to whoever? I mean, how many teams have all these picks, right? Like,
yeah, is that a worthwhile trade? I mean, is that
for a good front office? For a good front office, yeah, I think that's a really good trade.
Well, no, I'm sorry. My point is that one pick worth 3 extras? Like, is it like? I mean, they're the worst of each of those picks. They're all going to be in the 20s.
But you're trying to win now, right? So getting those
what
picks,
I'm saying is, if you are trading for Jimmy Butler, let's say, should Miami really value those 3 picks more than one that could potentially be number 1 in the draft?
Wait, sorry, say that again.
So you're talking about the Phoenix trade, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Phoenix traded their 2031 pick, which people are going to salivate about because they have a bunch of aging stars. You get 3 picks that are the worst of 2 or 3 different teams, one of whom I think is always Cleveland in that scenario, who should be good for the next several years.
Yeah.
So they're probably going to be in the late 20s. Like, if I'm
Uh,
Miami, why would I prefer that package? But not just Miami, but
well,
any team.
what if I told you could get arguably the third or fourth best player in the championship team with that pick?
Is that something I might be interested in?
Yeah, because
Um,
that's exactly what the Celtics did. They got Derek White for
that's
basically
very unlikely from
that's
the
what the Knicks got.
25th.
That's what the Knicks got Josh Hart for.
But this is anecdotal, right? If you look at the
But I'm saying these are concrete examples of players being moved.
concrete
Good players,
anecdotes,
yeah, but they're examples of in recent NBA history, good players on bad teams who want to tank, who want to suck, get moved for less than what their ultimate value is because their
I'm not
ultimate
talking about
value has
Butler though. I'm talking
risen.
about just looking at those picks, right? Like, would you like? Are those 3 picks better than that one? Because we saw that what happened with the Knicks. Like, we traded for 3 picks from the 11th, and I would argue we got less value. Right now, we'd helped you open up for Brunson and all of that. Fine, but just from a strictly pick perspective, I don't know that. Like, is that a more appealing trade
No,
package than just
but
having the 2031?
but you as the Suns need to find ways to open up flexibility to add more talent. They have that now. Like, and I'm not saying like, trust me, I actually think this trade is kind of genius for the Suns, but I don't trust their front office to use them profitably.
Well, it looks
Whereas,
like they're going to use them for Jimmy, right?
well,
That's the
we'll see. We'll see what happens. Apparently, I mean, Shams just said that it's actually not that close, and we'll see what happens. But like if you told me the Knicks did that trade, so they can't do that trade until I think next season or whatever it is, right? If the Knicks did that exact trade, if they did a trade, whatever, they trade their 2033 pick for 3 whatever less favorable of whoever has a bunch of fucking picks at that time, right? Let's say they're the same type of value picks. So, imagine 3 of OKC's picks, right? Hey, OKC, we'll give you the our 2033 pick for the the least favorable of they've got 5 bajillion picks, so the least favorable of your first round picks in these whatever years. If you gave the Knicks front office those picks, I would feel really, really confident that they would return value that would help us potentially win a title. Like, I would feel really confident about that because this front office has shown themselves to be resourceful. And have they maximized every single asset or won every single trade? No, they haven't. But I don't. But like on aggregate, look at where we are versus what they inherited, and I think you'd be like, yeah, they've done a pretty damn good job. So, you know, and like based on their track record, then yeah, I'd say I would trust them to do it. Like I would because I think they've shown that they can be resourceful with not great picks, right? Whether that be trading them for players, whether that be drafting guys later in the first round that develop into contributors or whatnot. They've shown that ability.
Yeah,
Like,
I would. Let's go ahead, sir.
I'm just saying, like, I mean, wouldn't you rather have more bites at the apple, right? Like, if you're a team that's limited, because if like really, I mean, the other thing the Suns had, right? They had also like they had traded all their swaps already. They had traded all their seconds basically, so they really just have this 1 second round pick sitting there and some really super shitty like seconds that are fake seconds basically, um, sitting there to trade. And now you've created just more options for yourself, a little bit more options. 1 pick, yeah, maybe the value of the 3 isn't as high cumulatively when you put it together as the 1, but having 3 means that you can use these picks a little bit more judiciously. Like for example, right? If you're the Suns, what if I can get I mean, I'm not even going to run the number. I'm not even going to say these numbers are possible financially. I don't know their situation, so fuck. And I don't know the contract number off the top of my head. But like, if you were like, oh, we can get Cam Johnson for Nurkic's expiring contract and 2 of those picks, and then I can attach 1 pick to some other fucking guy, like say Grayson Allen or Royce O'Neal, and get another quality player at 17, 18 million or whatever. Let's say Mitchell Robinson was healthy, just barely. Like, we know that he's not healthy or whatever, but let's say Mitchell Robinson was healthy. Oh, we can get Mitchell Robinson for 1 pick and Grayson Allen or something. Like, that would probably be a pretty good use of those assets, right? And that's better than what you could have gotten for the 1 pick in reality.
Yeah, so you're saying that using 3 different ones is going to be. Yeah, I mean, it depends
on
on
what you do
how
with
high
it.
you think that. It depends on how high you think. Like, would you rather have the Wizards pick and like, would you rather have 3 of the Wizards picks or 1 of ours from 2031? Right? Like,
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
kind of like.
and it's like, it makes sense for Utah to do it. Like, right, it makes sense for Utah to do this trade because they're probably sitting there running their projections internally, and they're probably like, wow, kind of sucks that the Cavs are just always going to win 50 games and be good, and now they look better than now they're going to win 60 games and be good. Like, these are not going to be high yield, like high upside picks. Why not bet against this team that we think is going to acquire Jimmy Butler and Kevin Durant? Oh, and by the way, those players are definitely not going to be on the team in 2031. Like, that makes sense for them. But for Phoenix, like, it just depends on your priorities as a team, and where you are. So, I mean, Oklahoma City has done this. Like, they traded, I think they traded like a first and a couple seconds to Denver 1 year for a swap or something like that. They did it last year with Dallas for sure. They traded a swap, or they got swap rights for a 2031 Dallas pick or something like that for a first round pick, and then Dallas was able to use that first round pick to get Gafford or PJ Washington. I don't remember which one, but like, that's actually that's a perfect example, right? Dallas didn't have a lot of resources, but they were creative, so they gave up a swap to get a 1, because I'm sure they determined like what was the price of getting PJ Washington, what was the price of getting Daniel Gafford, and then they get the 1, so now they're able to get both. So that's kind of like what I'm talking about, where it's, maybe the swap is the higher value asset.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to just think about these valuations, and I don't think they're homogenous across the league.
No,
So.
it can change, right? Like I would have thought, I think when they traded for Kyrie, I want to say they traded their 2029 first. At the time, I was like, man, that pick is going to be awesome, because I don't think Luka's going to stay with this shit show. But now they've had a couple good off seasons, right, in terms of acquiring talent. They draft Derek Lively, who's injured now, unfortunately for them. They acquired Derek Lively, and now you look at that team when they're healthy, and you're like, well, Luka's probably not going to leave, and they look really good, and they actually look like they have a decent setup here for at least the next couple of years minimum. So it's like all these pick valuations change so quickly and suddenly at times, right? Like, think about how people perceive the value of Knicks picks when they were like the apple of Danny Ainge's eye when we were talking about, trying to negotiate for Donovan Mitchell. And then think about how Knicks picks were viewed when we traded them for Mikal Bridges. Like, even if you think that was an overpay, which is a more than fair assessment to have, the value of those picks has changed now as far as the way they're perceived. So, like, it's constantly changing. I mean, I remember when the Nets traded for James Harden, right? Everybody's like, well, who cares about those picks, dude? You have James Harden, you have KD, you have Kyrie. You're going to be good for at least a few years here. Where's the risk? And we saw how that worked out.
Yeah, I would yeah, I mean, I would agree. I think that it's a very dynamic environment, and it's interesting to see there's bets on bets, right? Because draft picks themselves are bets on their value. Now you're betting on how the value of those bets will change when you're talking about these kind of things. So it's a pretty dynamic environment, and it'll be interesting to see how it pans out.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting how much the league has changed in terms of like the value of various things. I mean, I remember back in the fucking 2000s, teams just gave away picks like stupidly all the time. The Knicks certainly did, but it wasn't just the Knicks. I mean, I think there was one. The Knicks they actually got a first for Kurt Thomas. I want to say they traded Kurt Thomas to the Suns. They got a first round pick for that, and it was like, what? Like Kurt Thomas is worth a first round? Can you imagine a team trading a first round pick now for a profile player like Kurt Thomas? Like it just wouldn't happen. You see it all the time now, where even guys with like perceived higher value, like Quentin Grimes, had at least a year of quality rotation play as a wing that could check multiple positions, and he got moved for 3 seconds and the right to dump Tim Hardaway Jr.'s contract on Detroit. And like, I know he obviously had a down year, but yes, again, like this goes back to the whole thing. Like everything is volatile, everything changes in value. So it's interesting to think about that stuff. Where like, when do you sell high? When do you cash in? The Knicks have certainly cashed in a lot of their chips. So they kind of don't have stuff to cash in on. But maybe that's just what we think. Because I honestly, like, as much as like I honestly can't get over that Phoenix thing, because I thought that trade was like I think it's dumb mostly because of who you're entrusting with those picks, not because of the trade itself. The trade itself, I saw that and I was like, that's actually that's like really interesting. I never thought of that. I never thought of like, did you even think of that as an option of like what kind of trade could you do with, for if you're Phoenix to get more draft
Or
capital
several
potentially?
quarters better than $1, right?
Yeah.
No, that wasn't where I thought it'd go, but it might make sense,
Yeah, it's definitely creative. Like I have to give them credit for that, and I'm definitely, we know Isaiah Thomas always does well with trading draft capital, but I don't know. It's just, I think teams are they're so creative now, and again, I really don't know that. Like I'm not trying to sound smart because I don't either, but I don't know that any of us like that are not in the league, in these front offices that know how they're. Like if you don't have really detailed projections, right, that are based on all kinds of variables and shit you're running that are created by guys paid to do that, like I don't know how to judge a lot of these type of moves maybe in the right way, because it's really hard to like calculate all the type of risk that you need to calculate to really play it out, right? I mean, it's like the Doctor Strange thing where you're like, oh, I calculated all the fucking paths, but there are a lot of paths anything can go. And we also don't know what the Suns have been canvassing in the meantime, right? Maybe they know that Nurkic plus, like you talk to teams, right? So maybe a team's like, we don't really want Nurkic unless you can get us 2 picks of this caliber. And then we'll give you this guy who can fit in Nurkic's salary slot. So maybe they already know, or they have an idea of what they can and can't do. So until you kind of see it bear fruit, you can only judge the initial trade. But I gotta say, I do like the initial trade. I think it at least gives them options. Whereas before, I was like, so your only option here is just trading this one pick. Like, I don't know who you're even getting, because you're not going to get a star for that, right? Like, and at that point, who are you getting that changes your future? But now you have multiple options. It's a lot more interesting to look at it that way.
Yeah, I mean, there's always the ability to to your point, right, to use those picks to get, maybe you don't need another star, right? I think it looks like if they move Beal, that could be something that needs to happen. But with Booker and KD, you might want more defensive-minded role players next to them anyway, right? Which is not going to need, or the star package may be just strong for that. So
yeah,
or less suitable.
Yeah, and I mean, even we even saw this summer, like Minnesota traded their 2031 unprotected pick and a pick swap in 2030 to move into the lottery, right? They got the 8th pick. They drafted Rob Dillingham. So it's, I think now the way I'm trying to think of it is like these GMs in the league now are just so much more creative than the stuff we used to see in the league. Even going back to like when Morey was creative, right? When he was like the most cutting edge GM, his big thing was like using like willingness to take bad contracts for more picks. That's not that creative anymore. Basically, everybody understands the value of doing that and when you should do it and how
Yeah,
much.
it's like when Billy Beane was first like fielding is overrated, and then after Moneyball came out, he's like, actually, I think fielding is undervalued now, right? So like,
Yeah.
it always changes.
So it's just interesting to like wonder what is the next like thing. Like what's the next like whoa, didn't even think of that one before. There's always going to be something because every time you think that there's not much more you can do, there will be a thing. Um and like there's always the unintended consequences, right? So okay, we made this second apron so that teams couldn't exceed it, and we want to limit the ability to build super teams and all that type of shit. Well, what are the unintended consequences of that? And that's where I'm like, that's why I am like, when you were like, you have less capability. Yeah, like for sure, you're right. There's less ability for the Knicks to make moves because you have less avenues to do it. But like within the context of what is this new CBA, and then you look at, okay, how many teams are you competing for the set of players that you want? Within that context, we don't know. Like we don't know exactly what the Knicks would need to give up. What is the price of things? Then you have to also look at like which players are even available, right? Because it's a finite marketplace. It's not like you can just get whoever the fuck you want. And sellers can't just sell to whoever they want either, right? I'm sure sellers would love to be like, hey, Washington, I would love to give you, I don't know. Like if you're Danny Ainge next summer, I'm sure you would love to be like, hey, I'll give you Lauri Markkanen for your unprotected pick next year and a couple more down the line. But that's not going to be available to you. You're not going to get that deal. So even like it's a finite marketplace both ways. And you need buyers and sellers. So, that's always evolving too. Like I don't think anybody would have thought of the Pistons as anything more than a seller this year. But now you look at them and you're like, I mean, they could buy. They could do both. They have cap space. Like they could try and thread the needle. Like it changes constantly.
Yeah, it's a dynamic environment. So I mean, it definitely bodes, I guess, well for the Knicks to still have some leeway. And to your point, it really depends on how resourceful your front office is. And they've been so, right? I mean, they didn't have much to trade, but they got Derrick Rose. They didn't have much to trade, but it moved up and got better draft positioning even that year, right? That definitely bodes well.
Yeah, and even like even if you go think about like how Miami has been able to acquire talent and develop guys and stuff, like there's always kind of pathways that are not everybody's forte or the most most frequented, but like teams might, like again, like you mentioned with Billy Beane, there could be a team that's like, actually, this is an inefficiency and we know how to exploit it, so it's good for us. So I guess All-Star's coming out tomorrow. The All-Star berths are coming out tomorrow. I don't really care about who's starting, but I mean, I think Cat is, there's no question he's going to start. He's going to be a starter. That's locked in, guaranteed. That is, you can write that one in pen, engrave it, doesn't matter. But what do you like? Are you expecting Brunson to be a starter? Because it feels like that seems to be the consensus, but I'm not sure how that's going to work out.
I don't know how they're going to weight the All-Star. I mean, I don't think the coaches are going to vote LaMelo Ball over him. What's he, fourth in All-Star voting for guards?
Yeah.
So it's LaMelo. Who's in front of him? Lillard. No, I think Lillard.
And yeah, it's LaMelo, Lillard, and Mitchell.
Yes, I mean, the coaches I think will vote him, and probably I think I could see them voting Garland or Mitchell. I think he'll be top 2 coaches. I think he might be top 1. I don't know how that weighting is going to matter and all that. I'm not too concerned with it. You know, it's he's been an all-star, probably deserves all-star starter. But there's a lot of, I mean, you could see some coaches and media just hyping up. I mean, I think I've seen a lot of Cade Cunningham hype. Yeah, he's a good player on a team that's overachieving, but does Brunson deserve it? Yeah, I don't know how the votes are going to work out, but if the consensus says it is, I don't know what the Vegas says, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think Brunson will start. I would be kind of surprised if he doesn't. Aside from that, I think Mitchell will start. I actually think it should be Garland, but I think Mitchell will get the nod. He's got obviously the name, right? He's like got seniority in a lot of ways, and it's just how it goes. So I think that'll be the starting backcourt will be Brunson and Mitchell. So we'll finally get to see it. Finally get to see what could have been in a really competitive environment. Anyway, the front court, I'm actually kind of curious about the front court because I'm assuming Cat and Tatum are 100% starting. I don't know. The third guy's a little bit more variable. It's if Franz had stayed healthy, I think it would have been Franz, but he obviously didn't. And he's still not back, right? So I don't even know if he's going to make it. He probably won't. He didn't play enough games. Definitely not going to get voted in. I can't see the coaches picking him given the amount of games he missed. I mean, it's Giannis, right? It's Giannis. So it'll be Giannis. Those will be the 3 starters. Tatum, Giannis, Cat. Embiid will not be on the team this year. So that opens up a slot in the backup front court. There's some Jalen Johnson hype. There's Trae Young hype. Personally, I don't think Trae Young's going to make it. I think coaches don't like him. And I don't know why that would have changed. Jalen Johnson, I could see. I'm not sure how much hype he's going to get. He didn't get a lot of votes, obviously, but I don't even know how much the coaches are going to look at him. But Cade, I mean, Cade's not a front court guy. He's a backcourt guy, but Cade will be, I mean, he deserves it. I think he's been really, really good this year. He's fried the Knicks 2 times the Garden so far this season. And I think you need to reward a team that's exceeding expectations the way they have. And they've overcome adversity in their own right. Jaden Ivey went down and they haven't really skipped a beat, even with that, with him having to carry more of the load. So those are definitely interesting. There's a lot of interesting stuff with All-Star. You could argue Dame's definitely going to get in for sure as the backup guy. Like, is Tyrese Maxey really an All-Star this year? I don't know. I mean, they're pretty bad. I know that's not entirely on him or anything, but
over who, right? That's the thing. Are you putting him over Dame? Are you putting him over Garland? Are you putting him over Mitchell?
I wouldn't put him over any of those guys. I wouldn't put him over Halliburton, I don't think. I wouldn't put him over.
But you're kind of a Halliburton stan. So.
That's true. Yeah, I'm a big Halliburton guy. I mean, I don't even know if I'd put him over Zach LaVine. Why would I put him over Zach LaVine? I'm not sure that there's a great argument for that. I wouldn't put him over, I don't know. Jaylen Brown's probably going to get in. He'll probably take a backcourt spot. He actually hasn't had a particularly great year this year, but he's probably going to get one. I think Tyler Hero is a better argument than Tyrese Maxey this year.
That's because you're a racist.
That's true.
No, I mean, I think I would actually be surprised if Maxey got it. He seems to be more popular on NBA Twitter. Like, wins matter. But I also think that Brunson might get hurt by the coaches a little bit because they have one. It would be surprising if Brunson wasn't an All-Star starter. It'd be an absolute shock if Cat wasn't. I think Cat's going to be a starter, so they might say, you're a 3 seed, you deserve a starter. You don't deserve 2, right? Yeah. Whereas I could see the Cavs, just because of how phenomenal the Cavs have been, I could see both of those guys being starters, right?
We saw that with Atlanta, right? All 4 of their top players were all-stars, even though probably not all-star caliber players, right? Not all of them.
That East was so bad though. It was like such a different conference. I just can't imagine. I can't imagine a team like that ever getting rewarded, or any team getting rewarded like that again. I mean, that was crazy.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I personally wouldn't mind Cat and Brunson taking the week off, but that's just me. So,
I mean, I don't know. All Stars such a. It's not real. It's like they're not really doing anything.
yeah, I mean, I think. There was a time of this year. I mean, does Hart have an All-Star kiss? That might be an interesting thing to talk about.
He absolutely should. I mean,
near double with 4 or 5 assists. Those are prime Sean Marion numbers.
Sean Marion made a couple All-Stars.
Yeah, that's my point. Like,
so Hart
most people. I've made this comp a couple times, and people push back. It's like, and Sean Marion was a better player than Josh Hart, but that is the kind of impact he's having right now.
Josh Hart is 14 points, 9.5 rebounds, 5.6 assists. He's shooting 55.7 from the field, 36.2 from 3, 81.4 from the free throw line. He's got a 62.2 effective field goal percentage, and a 655 true shooting, which would be a pretty easy career high for him. So, I don't know. I mean, that is not. It's not. I mean, it's a non-traditional All-Star case you'd be making for him, right? Because what you'd kind of be doing is you're like giving him a lot of credit, and I'm not trying to say that to minimize what he's doing, but you're giving him a lot of credit for kind of being like a lineup balancer more than he's great. He's so great at this thing. Like, he's a great rebounder for a guard, but he's not a great rebounder in the context of like what the numbers are for most great, if you look at like the league as a whole.
Yeah. But it's close to double digits, and it is more impactful. Like,
Russell, it is more impactful from his position. Yeah.
Russell Westbrook wasn't the best rebounder in the league, but people paid attention when he had 10 rebounds a game, right? So, and the Hart is just the consistency has been. Every time we're like, oh, the Knicks had a shitty game again. I looked up yesterday, 7, 12, and 9 when he made the play to ice the victory. Hart did, right? That consistency should matter. I mean, look, I've been a guy who's been. I don't think I've ever been as out on Hart as some people, but I did. I thought that Hart and Barrett was a bad lineup together during that Miami series, and I gave Hart. I blamed him a little bit for that. One, he's shooting much better, so it's not even a question. But two, it's just, we should appreciate him while we have him. But he is one of my favorite Knicks ever at this point.
Yeah, Josh Hart's great. Josh Hart's awesome. He just figures out what your lineup, what you need him to do in a game, and he finds a way to do it, right? Like, he's, again, 5.5 assists is fucking wild for this guy. And it's not
the ball a ton, right? So,
and it's not just that he gets assists; it's the value of his assists, right? Because he creates high value shots. He's not getting these bullshit shots. He's creating shots they wouldn't get otherwise, because nobody else can create shots like him in transition on this team. Not anybody. And that's just like a special value, because transition opportunities are often the cleanest looks you're going to get in a basketball game. So the fact that he creates a lot of this, I mean, I don't even know how to determine this. I don't know what his percentage of assists would be defined as in transition, but I imagine it'd be like half of his assists per game. So, you're talking about something like 6 to 9 points given a game. Very nice. If it's like 3 2s or 3 3s, but that's really, that's super fucking valuable. And that's not something that many guys in the league can do, especially not ones that are not ball dominant.
Yeah. Yeah, and Yazanov, it's interesting to think about people who felt like it was an overpay game. I mean, there were people like Chris Murray is going to be better than Josh Hart next year. Right? That's what we gave up. Obviously, it didn't turn out that way. And that's the guy. I mean, that there is a guy like that on every title team. I don't want to say he's Rodman, but that is the kind of role that Rodman fit for those Bulls. Rick Fox, Derek Fisher, kind of hybrid there. I think he's better than those guys. Like he scores too, right? So you can't even just limit him to that. I think you said it well. Like he's just a guy that he's a chameleon. He'll just you need a bucket, he'll get you a bucket. You need a rebound, he will get that. You need a loose ball, he'll get that. And for a team that at times has lacked energy this year, he is the one guy you can never point to.
I mean, he definitely lacks energy at times, maybe on defense, but no, I agree. Like you can't even within games where maybe he's lacking in moments, he just figures out something in the game to give you, and he really finds a way to contribute in that way. So, yeah, he's definitely. I mean, he's just a unique player. There's really nothing else. There's no other way to put it other than that. He's just a unique player. And if the NBA, I think if the Knicks were, funny enough, right? If they had won some of those games where we're like, they gave this one away, they gave this one away, they gave this one away. If they had won maybe 3 of those games, 4 of those games, now you're talking about your 33-9 or whatever the hell they be, 33-12.
Yeah, there's a couple they could have lost too, right? So.
Yeah, but if those flip in your direction and everything else had stayed the same, it's funny. It's funny to think of. Like, then you have
that
Veronica
man. That Veronica Vaughn, man. If you can imagine what it would have been like if it did, huh?
I could try. But yeah, like it's funny to think about that because then I think he has a stronger case, even though it shouldn't. Like that's not how voting works, but it should work, but it will, and it's going to. And I fully expect. I think the Cavs are going to get 4 because I think Mobley is 100% going. I'd be surprised if Garland and Mitchell don't go, and they've just been the best team in the East, but at a clip that.
And there's not a ton of great bigs, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, Porzingis hasn't really had an all-star year. I mean, are they going to reward him just because, like...
The Celtics are good? I don't think so. And the Cavs have a better record. Bam has been awful. I mean, Giannis, Mobley, Cat, and I'm forgetting one. But who's the guy I'm forgetting? Bam sucked. I mean, I think there's 3 locks. Giannis, or I think there's 4 locks, and I can't think of the 4th one. But there's Giannis,
Tatum, Cat.
Tatum's a Giannis, Tatum, Cat, and then Mobley's probably a lock as well. There aren't just a lot more bigs beyond that. Paolo's, I mean, he's played 15 games, 10 games. Maybe Paolo gets in. What is it? Hearten, Windhorse, what he said. It heartens me that Windhorse is fuck Windhorse. So I mean, maybe Paolo takes Allen's spot. I doubt it. I think the coaches are going to value Allen being healthy and really productive.
The thing, you know what? It's so weird though because Paolo made it last year. He kind of has the rep now, right? Because he went with he played with Team USA one summer. Again, he made last year. He had a good playoff showing last year. He's putting up numbers again this year, like a negative net rating. So, I think all those things work in his favor, but I don't know. I don't know how you and to be fair, Orlando has kind of somehow cobbled together enough wins to stay in the mix in the East. They might reward that. And it's like if you're gonna reward somebody, they probably would reward Paolo. But how many games has Paolo even played? Paolo has played the season. Paolo has played 11 games, so probably not. Yeah, you're probably right. It's just not enough.
Yeah, so I mean, unless Windhorse is in charge of the voting. I mean, that was such a ridiculous. I mean, after his dark arts thing, maybe shut the fuck up. But no, he needs to blow his wind. So
The West is interesting. I wonder if Jalen Williams is going to get in. I don't know. His numbers are like nice, but they're not that great. But they've been so good, and it's like it's another one of those situations, right? Where it's like are you going to reward the team for that in a way? Because I mean, he's averaging 20 and a half, 5.7, 5.2 this year, 47 and a half, 33.8, 78.1 splits. It's actually not been that efficient. It's one of his worst scoring, or it's his least efficient year as a player so far, which is kind of interesting. It's also his worst on-off year, which is also interesting. But like, does he get rewarded because the team has been so good? I think that's probably what's going to happen. It's hard to see the coaches not putting two guys on, right?
yeah, it's for the Cavs. Yeah,
No, for
that'd
for the Thunder.
Yeah, I mean, SJ is a lock. I don't think that's unprecedented. I also
They have
just
the
think
best.
Jalen.
They have the best record in the league. I don't know.
I mean, how many times has the team had the best record in the league and not gotten multiple All-Stars? I feel like that's happened before. Definitely when LeBron was in Cleveland.
Didn't?
But I think Jalen.
Didn't they have like did Zadrunas Ilgauskas make an All-Star game? Mo Williams made an All-Star game.
Mo Williams made an All-Star game. Wow.
Yeah, I think Anderson Varejao made an All-Star game. I gotta check this. I'm pretty sure he did.
Mo Williams. Let's see.
Yeah, Mo Williams 100% made an All-Star, man. No, Varejao never did.
2009, and then
Varejao never did. I just checked it.
The what was his? I gotta look up his nicknames now. Wild Thing, Sideshow Bob. Okay.
Ilgauskas made 2 All-Stars, but I think both were actually one was with LeBron, one was without LeBron.
So Jalen probably gets in. I don't think. Do you think Isaiah Hartenstein gets in?
No, I don't think Hartenstein gets in. It does. If he had actually stayed healthy through the All-Star break, I think he would have. But the fact that he started the season hurt and then now is hurt again, I don't think he will.
Coaches want tough players, huh?
Yep.
Fart and shit.
Yeah, I think he'll make it. I think Anthony Edwards will make it. Jokic, obviously. AD. It'll be interesting. LeBron's going to make it. I wonder. I mean, he's going to win on the fan vote heavily. So you could just, I would just assume that because he's LeBron, the coaches will honor that. So LeBron is a starter too. Is AD going to be the starter? I don't know. Definitely interested to see that. Maybe Randall.
There's no AD isn't a starter. That'd be funny if Randall made it again.
No, he will definitely not make it this year.
I mean, Ant, you think will get in? I imagine
Ant will definitely get in. Ant will get in. I think Steph will get in. Fox will get in because they've been good now again. Like they've.
Wemby should start.
Wemby should get in. I mean, for sure. He's been an all-star level player, no doubt about it. As much as some may not like hearing that. Certain unnamed individuals that we know.
Yeah, I mean, I think
like Wemby has less votes than Kevin Durant. I think he's been better than him. He has less votes than LeBron. I think he's been better than him. Like he's been the second best big in the West, and even that there's some debate depending on how you quantify defense. So, yeah, and it's just there's not a lot in the front court. I mean, I guess does Jaren Jackson have an all-star case over a guy like Jalen Williams?
Jaren Jackson has an all-star case over a lot of guys that he might not get it over. I would take Jaren Jackson over Anthony Davis this year. Like he 100% deserves it over Anthony Davis. John Morant probably will get in. Like I can't see Memphis not getting at least one of those guys. They should probably get 2, but they should at least get one of those guys. But like, yeah, Jaren Jackson's been awesome this year. He deserves it for sure. But like, Rudy Gobert's not going to get it this year. I think he made it last year, and he's had a couple of rinky-dink all-star bids. So hopefully we can put that one to bed now. Be over that.
Yeah. We'll see, but yeah, I agree. It's especially he's fixed a lot of the things that he's been criticized for. Right? He's not a great rebounder still, but been tougher there. Doing all the right things. Those are the kind of players that coaches reward too, and it's not just the job there. So
yeah, for sure. All right. I think this is a good place to wrap up. I have nothing else to add unless you do.
Nope.
All right. Well, that is our show for today. Hope everybody enjoyed it. Stacy, anything you want to plug before you get out of here?
No, I'm good. Go Birds.
And go Bills. I got nothing else. So hope everybody enjoys the rest of your week. This will be dropping Thursday morning. I think we'll probably have something for you on Friday. But yeah, the Knicks don't play until Saturday, so that's good. All right. Again, hope everybody enjoys the rest of your week, and I'll see you when I see you. Thank you to our sponsor, Bet Online. Peace.